Welcome to the podcast. Here's a sneak peek of what's coming up in today's episode. Did you used to be crap at sales?
Yes. Applied for a sales job. They wouldn't give it to me. They gave me a customer success job instead. And then I kind of had to scrap my way into the sales team. I nearly shut my company down.
What?
Yeah.
What was the context of the email?
What
did the first 30 days look like for you in the role?
Throwing myself into deal reviews. So I really wanted to quickly understand the accuracy of like the pipeline that they're working on, what is common themes that I can plug in, train in to support upskilling. I don't think anyone can ever know someone's motivations 100% unless it's themselves. It's asking them genuine questions. It's taking time to go out for a night out with them. It's understand what they like doing at weekends.
I want to go into your leadership style. Because leadership has come to you from a very early age.
You're leading a team, you've got to lead by example. I can't expect anyone to be transparent and open with me if I'm not that way to them. You spend more of your time with your colleagues than you do with anyone in your personal life. If you can't make it fun, like what are you doing?
I know that one thing you're very good at is recruitment.
Yeah.
Talk to me about that.
I think it's really easy to get recruitment wrong. It's way easier to get it wrong than it is to get it right. There's three key kind of areas I recruit around, which is IQ, EQ, and then your AQ, which I think is...
Kylie, let's talk about coaching. What does coaching mean to you?
It's very much about the structure. If they understand the structure and they understand what information they need to find out, then the coaching comes down to the how you're doing that and how can we improve that. David Beckham.
Let's go with Hoyland for many.
Hoyland? Okay, he doesn't just get on a pitch and shoot a goal, right? He has to practice, he has to train. How many kicks has he done? Thousands, probably, over years and years and years. It's the same principle for sales. You can't just stick people on a call and tell them what they need to do and expect them to do it really well.
Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the I Used to Be Crap at Sales podcast. I'm your host, Mark Ackers, co-founder and head of sales at My Sales Coach. And today, in the big orange chair, I am joined by the Enterprise Sales Director of Datamaran, Carly Pledge. Carly, great to have you on the podcast and in the orange chairs. How are you doing?
Yeah, good. Thanks so much for having me.
More than welcome. Thank you for coming up from London. It is lovely to be sat with someone that has a similar accent to mine.
I bet.
Well, just off camera, try to take the mickey out of our accent, didn't they? And they realised they were outnumbered.
Outnumbered now.
Let's kick this off with a yes/no question, Carly. Mm-hmm. Did you used to be crap at sales?
Yes.
How crap are we talking?
So I actually applied for a sales job. They wouldn't give it to me. They gave me a customer success job instead. And then I kind of had to scrap my way into the sales team. And then once I was in that, they then put me in an academy for mid-performers that should be performing higher.
Right.
And that's when I really got like the kick to be like, no, I'm not going to be mid.
And what's that period of time then from customer success to being put in that academy?
So it was actually in the training for customer success. There was a guy called Ed Arthur who was like one of the top salespeople. He came and he's an MMA fighter, walks a bit like Conor McGregor. So he come walking into this academy. I was like 17 at the time. And he was like, who's Carly Pledge? And I was like, oh no, like hiding my face. And I was like, hello. And he was like, you've put through loads of referrals. I've converted them. What is she doing in CS? Get her into sales. And they really respected him and said, okay,
right,
put me in sales.
And it sounds like whilst that happened because of Ed, you wanted to be in sales anyway.
Yeah.
And so what made you, when you were in customer success, what made you want to push for sales?
I don't know, to be honest. I think I was just young and wages weren't good then. It weren't like SDR salaries. It was like 17 grand a year or something. So the only way you could earn additional money was being in sales. And it was very much like, I don't know what else to do. So that seems like a smart idea.
You started on 17?
Yes, 16, 17.
Lucky, I started on 11.
Oh, nice.
When I asked you if you used to be crap at sales and you said yes pretty quickly, was there a particular moment that come rushing to the front of your mind?
I think most people in their first year are crap at sales, at least, if not 2-3 years. But I think the minute funny enough, I'm still best friends with her now. They came up to me and this girl, I never suffered from lack of confidence. That wasn't really an issue for me. And probably my ego was better than my ability at that age. So they came and said, right, you're in this new academy. And we were like, what? And it was an academy. And the people they put us in with, we were like, we're not the same as these lot. Like, they're rubbish. And we thought we were just so much better than we were. So that was like the big wake up call. you're not as good as your mouth is saying you are. Like the actual results show different. So that was like the big, okay, I need to really put some thought into this.
How did it make you feel then when you got that?
Fuming. I was talking about quitting. I was blaming everything but myself. I think it's quite typical at that age as well. You kind of blame everything but you.
If you was to look back now, do you think they made the right decision?
Absolutely.
And why do you say that?
I think without that, I wouldn't have got as passionate about sales. I think it was very much a job up until that point, and it was just, I'm sure you hear this every time you do this podcast, it was something I kind of fell into. So yeah, I think without that kind of wake up call that woke up this like competitive spirit and, okay, let me see what makes you think that. Why are you thinking that? How do I get better at it? And go into that kind of self-development mindset.
And for clarity, they've called an academy. You're using that. Is that a modern day Pip?
No, it wasn't. It wasn't that. You didn't get them. That place you either performed or you got sacked.
Right.
So it wasn't. It wasn't quite a Pip, but it was, yeah, like, we're giving you some extra training. You need to pull it out after you're doing this training. Otherwise, you will lose your job. It was, so yeah, similar to.
And how many people were put in this academy?
I think there was 10 of us.
How many people progressed out of it?
I think all of us did.
Okay.
Yeah. We were all, for want of a better phrase, we were all like the naughty kids. It was a call centre environment. It was most people under 25 and there was like hundreds. So it was drinking culture was very strong and not really taking the career that serious. It was more about, it's a bit like an extension of school, I felt like. So yeah, it was really good fun. But I think that kind of woke this thing up in us lot of, okay, we're not gonna be the naughty kids at the back of the classroom not getting good results.
Let's talk about howlers.
Yeah.
Is there one howler in particular across your sales career? It sounds like there is.
There's a few.
What's the funniest howler that you would like to share with us?
I nearly shut my company down.
What?
Yeah, I think it was like it was. So we were basically a startup. One of my roles was started as sales manager for this like proper bootstrap startup company. We were an exclusive lead supplier to one particular company. And we had an exclusive agreement with them for a year to only supply to them. Now, this year was coming to an end, so we were obviously testing the market out and speaking to some other potential partners. And we thought we'd start generating a few leads for this new potential partner as like a proof of concept. And what I accidentally... two people at each were called Chris. And the Chris at our existing partner was...
Oh God, I can see where this is
the worst man I've ever worked with. Like, to this day, if I ever saw him, I can't stand the guy. He was just unnecessarily rude all the time. I really hope he's not watching this because this is awkward. But he was just horrible to work with. And we were quite young and he was just really like almost like a bully all the time. So I hated dealing with this Chris. The other Chris, lovely, really, really nice. I've still got him on Instagram and Facebook. But I sent it to the wrong Chris. I sent it to the horrible Chris, who then went insane. And I was like, oh my God, like if they pull the plug, we've still got a few months that we need to keep this going. So it was, it was probably one of the worst times for feeling like you're really in trouble.
What was the context of the email?
It was all the leads that we'd gathered for another company. So yeah, it was really...
And you sent it to the wrong Chris?
Yeah. And some of them were the other Chris's customers as well, which made it worse because we'd been prospecting their customers without realising they were their customers.
How did you survive that?
Well, at first I just wouldn't pick up my phone. So that my first instinct, my CEO at the time was lovely. And I kind of rang him and he was like, yeah, Chris is calling me like non-stop. And I was like, yeah, he's calling me too. Like, and we literally got in a room, strategized how we were going to deal with it. And we sorted it ultimately. But we had to have our tail between our legs quite bad.
Wow, that is a howler that I'm sure I could ask more questions about. Yeah. But you've gone from nearly shutting down your company to recently promoted, congratulations, to Enterprise Sales Director. How you find the role?
Yeah, really good. Really good. It's I think it's typical of any kind of fast growing company is there's a lot to be done. But the team is amazing. I'm fortunate enough to inherit a really, really switched on smart team that my main kind of focus is just giving them extra support, coaching and structure. And yeah, we've got a good product, so in a pretty good space.
Well, a little plug there. So you've gone from managing the SDR team to now managing the AE team.
Yeah.
What's the biggest lesson you've learned in this new role already?
The biggest lesson is just how important, and I kind of already knew this, but it's reaffirmed it, how important structure, coaching and development is. Like that is, I think, something that was missing for the team previously. So my concern coming in was that there'd been a lot of changes in a really short space of time in the company, and I didn't know if the team were going to buy into everything that we're doing or see it as like, oh, that's just more work for me to do, or, you know, more change it. You know, when someone's in that kind of mindset, I thought there'd be frustration, but they've jumped into it. So I think learning not to assume, which is something I speak about all the time, like don't ever make assumptions, but I assumed it would be much harder implementing new strategies and processes, and the team have jumped into it and really pleasantly surprised me at how well they've taken it.
And why do you think they have taken it so well?
Because they're good. They're like good people. I think they've wanted some extra support as well, and I feel like they've wanted to be listened to and not just feel like they're giving, you know, forecasts in every meeting, but they're actually doing things. We've also hired a really great head of sales enablement, so, and I'm getting them on my sales coach. So I think like they've wanted that kind of care almost of, okay, this is where you're at. Great, we need forecasting, but we also need to know how we're going to improve that and how we can work together to strategize this account, or what information you should be uncovering at what stage, and all these little fun details that we know in sales. But yeah, I think they've really taken to it well.
Talk to me about inheriting a sales team.
Yeah.
We had a podcast a couple of days ago where this was a topic that we spoke about. What's it like to inherit a sales team?
I think it's tough. But I think building one from new is tough as well. So pick your battle, really. I think what can be really tough is with inheriting a team, you know you're going to be making changes. And I think the change management piece is often not as well thought out in sales functions as it is in some other teams. So I think inheriting a team and understanding the different characters is really important. But yeah, it can also be super fun. It depends on the team you inherit, I guess.
And talk about the team you've inherited in terms of how big is that team?
5.
So you've got 5 AEs that you've inherited. What does the first 30 days look like for you in the role?
Throwing myself into deal reviews. So I really wanted to quickly understand the accuracy of like the pipeline that they're working on, what is common themes that I can plug in, train in to support upskilling, what is patterns across specific individuals and how we can address them, and just really understanding their style and how they work, and you know, how they best adapt. So I knew them anyway, which was always, I think that gives you an advantage when you already know people. But yeah, I think it was just about throwing myself in and really learning a bit more about how they work rather than who they are.
Is that the danger where assumptions come in though?
Yeah, massively.
Because you already feel
massively.
Like you know them. So how did you sort of kick off things? Like you've gone from knowing them,
yeah, being
friends with them, to I'm the boss now.
Yeah.
How did you set out your stall, so to speak?
I don't do that. I'm the boss stuff.
No.
So one of them called me that. He was like, "All right, boss," and I was like, "Please don't call me that." So I think it comes down to the same thing: is don't be a dick. Like just set expectations. I think one thing that I've probably like shown in every leadership position is like genuinely care about your team, care about them as individuals. If you understand how people tick and what they care about, what their strengths and weaknesses are, you can much easier manage that and manage performance off the back of it. So, but I don't think you can fake caring. You either care about people or you don't. So I think genuinely care about them, show them that. If they've worked with you already, they probably have a sense for how you are, and the same goes for me, right? I've got strengths and weaknesses that they're all aware of. So yeah, I think it's just about being really transparent with them on this is what we're trying to achieve. I want to help you do it. Let's go.
So what are the expectations
From me or from them?
you? What if I'm an AE in your team?
Mm-hmm.
What are the expectations I'm aware of from you as a sales leader?
Number one is transparency. I think it's impossible to have a good working relationship if you're not transparent with each other. I don't buy into the corporate professionalism stuff, clearly. But I think there's also, like, if you've got issues, we talk about it first and foremost. If you've got frustrations, you can come and shout at me in a room about them. You don't create a black pit and let everyone else come into that. Like, that's, I think, something that is really important. And I think generally, like, try. Like, if you're not trying, it doesn't matter how much coaching I give you, you're not going to increase your performance. So as much as I have a pretty high work ethic, I expect people to have a work ethic too. And I'm not saying you should be working late at night and weekends and all that stuff, but I do think you should have a passion for what you're doing and care about the quality of what you're doing as well.
Totally, you've got to have commitment.
Yeah.
You've got to have commitment.
Yeah.
And like you say, you can have all the coaching in the world. If the commitment and the desire is not there,
Yeah.
it's not going to work. You said that they know about your strengths and weaknesses. What are your weaknesses?
Time management. I'm often one to be like, have you got 5? And then I'll spend 45 minutes chatting to them. So that's not my strength. I think, like, weakness is professionalism. I'm the opposite of professional. I once got told in my last role not to swear at people on my team. But I don't do it in, like, a bad way. I just think I'm not a professional person. I'm not that kind of way inclined. So and I think also I wear my heart on my sleeve, which I think is what endears a lot of people to me. But I think it can also have its limits where you wish you could just be like, okay, I don't need to show all my feelings and emotions all the time.
How do you manage your feelings and emotions as a sales leader?
I've got a really strong network. So I tap into external support all the time. I've been quite hot on, like, self-development since I was early 20s. So there's loads of ways. Meditation, gaming, going for a walk with a dog.
Nice.
I'm not one of them gym goers, but I'm sure that works for some people too.
Apparently.
Yeah.
Apparently.
I'll never know.
Talk to me about motivation, because here's the thing. I think most sales leaders think they know what motivates people on their team. But actually, it's assumptions.
Yeah.
Or it's based on what motivates them.
Yeah.
How do you truly understand the intricacies of the people in your team and what really motivates them?
I think there's a Chinese saying, I might be making this up, so please don't quote me, where it's like you've got 3 masks, right? Or 5 masks, some amount of masks. So you've got the one that you show to other people, the one that you show to your closest friends and family, and the one that's, like, for yourself. I don't think anyone can ever know someone's motivations 100% unless it's themselves. So I think as much as I could sit here and tell you what I'm motivated about, you wouldn't know that 1% detail that's in the back of my head that only I know, right? So I think knowing that you're never going to ever know anyone 100% is part of it. And I think it's similar to when you're selling. Like, it's genuine curiosity about them. It's asking them genuine questions. It's taking time to go out for a night out with them or you know, away from, like, the work professional settings to get to know them as well. It's understand what they like doing at weekends. It's understanding, you know, who's important in their life and what that kind of says about them. So I don't think you'll ever know your team 100%. My team's a mixed bag of characters, mixed bag of, you know, seniority as well on the team. So they're naturally going to be spurred by different things and different stages in life, and just get to know them as best you can. I
want to go into your leadership style, because leadership has come to you from a very early age.
Yeah.
But just before we do that, just on the getting to know your team, how much of a balancing act is it between you getting to know them and them getting to know you? And the reason I ask that is lots of managers will feel like they have to wear the mask, where they don't share too much about them and they just constantly are learning about their team but not giving back.
Yeah.
But the team can then feel like they don't know their boss. How do you manage that?
I think if you're leading a team, you've got to lead by example. I can't expect anyone to be transparent and open with me if I'm not that way to them. And honestly, it's just not in my wheelhouse to not just be who I am. I've never been one. I've been pulled up on it many a time in my career that I tell my team too much, or especially in bigger companies. I think in smaller companies it's not as prevalent, but in bigger companies you shouldn't be telling your team this. You've got to keep some stuff to your chest. And it's like, why? Like, if they understand, half the frustration that I've seen happen in teams is because they don't understand why changes are being made, or they have no warning and a change will happen and they're like, well, why is this change? We love the old way and this is going to mean this, and they don't understand the thought process behind it. So and then also, especially in sales, one of the biggest things is developing that commercial awareness, right? It takes years to do that. It doesn't happen overnight. And the more you can teach them about why decisions get made in your own business, the more they'll then understand as well other businesses. So I think I'm super transparent. What you see is what you get. Bit of a Marmite, but I think you have to be yourself before you can expect them to be themselves to you. And typically I'm probably one of the most extroverted in the room in most companies I've been in. So it's easy for me to be like that. It's a lot harder for an introverted person on my team to open up. So yeah, I think it's always going to be a give and take, like any relationship, right?
And is that what you'd call it, a relationship?
Yeah, absolutely.
Don't disagree.
I was going to say it.
Don't disagree.
Is it not?
No,
yeah.
But some
100%.
people managers will be like, I'm the manager. I keep you at arm's length.
Yeah, no.
And it feels like obviously you're totally different to that. But I know how much the team think of you and how much they love being managed by you. I imagine the SDR team were really sad to lose you to the AE team.
I got a message the other day. I was late going into the office. I had a call in the morning because I'm still looking after the SDRs until my replacement comes in as well. So yeah, it's been super fun. But they messaged and she was like, "Oh, Carly, you've inherited more kids here." Like everyone's asking, "Where's Carly?" It's the AEs now as well. And I think it's probably why I don't buy into the corporate professional stuff all the time, is you spend more of your time with your colleagues than you do with anyone in your personal life. If you can't make it fun, like what are you doing?
I have definitely been, I don't want to say caught because it sounds bad, but I've been caught saying the same thing many a times. Like you spend more time with your colleagues than you do your family.
If you don't like them, you shouldn't be there.
But let's talk about professionalism because, as I say, I really want the context of this show to be about leadership style. Yeah. You say openly you're not a professional person in that sense, right? You started your career at HSBC.
Yeah. I don't know what they were thinking.
Now, so I spent 6 weeks working in a bank myself. Yeah. It was like a student placement 6 weeks. Hated every second of it. You were there for 4.5 years.
I think it's more. I think my LinkedIn's wrong. Whoops.
You started there in 2008. Now, some people, I feel like most people will know what happened in 2008. Yeah. But why don't you just share what happened in 2008? And that must have been a really interesting time to work at a bank.
It was horrific. Talk about baptism by fire. So I think I started in 2007, just before that all happened. But 2008 was the big financial crisis. So I think we used to make tally. So mine wasn't the branch bank. It was a call centre, which I think changes like the professionalism of it sometimes. But yeah, it was very much all the crashes happened. I can't even think what the word's called. What's it called when that big thing happens financially? Recession. Recession. That's the one. I was going to say retention. I was like, no, that's not right.
It's almost the opposite.
Yeah. So the recession happened. I was also at that point, I'd got myself onto Outbound. So Outbound was like the elite in the sales world in HSBC. You couldn't get onto it unless you were smashing inbound by a certain amount. So I got into Outbound and they put me on the lending queue, which was you're ringing people up that you've charged £300 a month for going over their overdraft in the midst of a recession. You're trying to make them buy a loan or a credit card. So that was really tough. I think daily, and Stu Taylor on your previous one said the same kind of thing. Like daily, you are getting told, screamed at. I got called a financial rapist multiple times. And naturally, it's when people aren't earning a lot of money, and it's you're charging them that much. It's a really emotive subject that you're cold calling people about. They often didn't respond greatly to it.
And I see you started there as a sales team exec, but as I say, moved into a deputy team leader.
Yeah.
That must have been a really important stage in your career in terms of how you started to develop your leadership style and really how you run a sales team.
Yeah.
And I imagine, tell me if I'm wrong, you would have got a lot of support moving into a team leader role in terms of, I just imagine they had, I'm not saying it was good quality, but again, knowing what it's like to work at a bank, lots of training and support. And
when I started at HSBC and to now, no company has ever come anywhere close to what they give you in terms of training and development. Like I hated it at the time because I'm just not a classroom learner. But looking back, I totally see the value of that. I knew so much more going into that role than any role I've ever worked at since. So I think they were great in the original kind of onboarding and training and development piece. The deputy kind of team leader stuff happened when, like now looking back, I understand there must have been a lot more at play at that point. So my team leader went off with like stress. The team that I was on were kind of underperforming. They were one of the bottom in the like ranks of teams. And it was very much just like, okay, Carly, you need to help out and jump in. So it wasn't kind of formalised initially. It was just like, you're plugging this gap. And that, I think that was quite challenging. I think I was the youngest on the team. There was a kind of underlying frustration with everyone on the team. Not just at me, but at how things were going at that point in the company. So, we turned it around really quickly. We had a lot of fun doing it as well. We made it really entertaining. I think I'm naturally quite protective of people that I care about. So I knew all my team. I got on really well with all of them. I knew their different styles and personality traits. And it was little tiny tweaks that really made a big difference for them and just someone actually caring about what they're doing. And I didn't do the paperwork that leadership wanted me to do. That was what signed off a lot of leaders at that point. But I'd done the stuff that actually helped the people on my team, and I'll stand by that. I think that developed that start of one of the traits I'd like to think all, if not most of my teams that I've managed would say is like, Carly will go to war for you. Carly will go to war with the CEO if she needs to, because I won't have things negatively impact my team without it being considered on different options.
What were some of the tweaks that you made?
Giving them a bit of time, getting them to listen to top performers' calls, listening to their own calls. It's a hill I will die on. Like, listen to your own calls as much as you can, and really understanding like what you're doing different to someone that's generally about tweaking the questions you ask or tweaking the responses, or so it was different for different people. But yeah, I think ultimately it comes from just carving time out, listen to your calls together.
I know this is my word, but I know you're going to agree with it because we've known each other a number of years now.
Yeah.
But it sounds like you were just coaching very quickly.
Yeah, literally.
And where did that natural sort of desire to coach come from?
I think it's just like common sense, right? You'd like to think so.
I'd like to think so.
But yeah, I think it's just pure common sense. Like and I think it was a podcast I've listened to of one of yours. Like, if you look at any other profession that gets paid what sales get paid, there is an insane amount of training. There's courses, there's practice. David Beckham, I don't think he's still a footballer. Carly, shows how out of touch I am. Who's a current footballer, striker?
Let's go with Hoyland for Man United.
Hoyland?
Yeah.
Okay, he doesn't just get on a pitch and shoot a goal, right? Score a goal.
I mean, he doesn't score as many as I'd like, but he scores goals.
But like, he has to practice, he has to train, he has to. How many kicks has he done to get that top left in every time? Like thousands, probably over years and years and years. And I think it's the same principle for sales. You can't just stick people on a call and tell them what they need to do and expect them to do it really well.
Yeah.
And I think that the lack of coaching leads to a lot of people that could be good at sales, leaving the industry.
One of the things that you've said that I think just all leads into, it's just like that genuine care for your team. That I think you use the word like paternal. Like you want to look after your team. You want to ensure that their best interests are taken care of. And really, to grow a team, you have to grow the people and help them. So it feels like I can see when you took that team, they need help.
Yeah.
I'm going to spend time with them. But how did you get your own way in a company that would have just been littered with red tape?
I don't know. Like, looking back, I did get told off quite a few times about not. It was very like every conversation you had was written up, and call coaching had a really defined structure to it as well. So there was a lot of process and documentation there that you needed to do. I did get pulled up on that and had to complete it all. But I focus first on doing the stuff that's actually going to help them. They're not going to help by me giving them a sheet on what they need to improve. They're going to be helped by talking it through and practicing and listening to calls. And often as well, it's a confidence thing with a lot of people in sales. Like they really suffer, I think, more than most other departments from imposter syndrome and, doubting their ability and doubting whether they can do X, Y, and Z.
What percent? How many salespeople do you think you've managed in your career?
Hundreds.
How many people do you think, let's do as a percent, have got that imposter syndrome and doubt themselves?
90, 95%.
How do you help
Maybe
that?
even 99.
I don't disagree.
That goes up as well to leadership, right? Like there's a lot of people that think once you're a leader, what do you do all the time? I just see meetings on your diary. They don't understand that like there's still a lot more work to be done being a leader, and you're on your own doing it as well. So I think especially people going newly into leadership suffer a lot from imposter syndrome as well. But I think there's two things. I think one is, I stole this from Andy White, so shout out to him if he's listening. One of the things is you can only get imposter syndrome if you're really self-aware and if you're going through a high phase of growth, which is both good things to be, right? But if you're not self-aware and you're growing, you don't really care whether you're doing it well or not. And if you're not growing and you are self-aware, then you're aware that you're not growing, so there's nothing to be worried about. So I think like putting it into that context of like, okay, it's fine that it's normal. It's more than human to feel uncomfortable when you're pushed out of your comfort zone. So understanding that, and then also I think when your emotions are high, it's using logic to kind of settle it all down as well. So, okay, logically, what's the big thing that's stressing me out here? Why is that stressing me out? How can I break that down? How can I make that easier to digest? And I always use like the 5x5 rule. Like if it's not going to matter in 5 years, I'm not going to stress it for more than 5 minutes.
I love that. I've not heard that.
Yeah.
5x5. Where'd you get that from?
I don't know, some book, podcast, or somewhere.
And is that the whole principle of the 5x5 rule?
Yeah.
If it's not going to matter in 5 years,
Don't stress it for more than 5 minutes.
I love that.
Yeah.
Here's something that's interesting. If you've managed hundreds of people and you think as much as 99% of people have had that imposter syndrome, I know the answer for you will be different because of how open you are, the expectations and the transparency, and you will naturally create a safe space, right? Mm-hmm. But how many people do you think go to their manager and say, I've got imposter syndrome, I'm struggling with self-belief?
Yeah, not many. And I think even if you do create that kind of, or you try to create it as best you can, there'll still be things that happen on a business level that you're going to get the blame for as a manager, whether you've been party to that or not. And there's still going to be things that are often misinterpreted and misunderstood as well that you also get the blame for. So I think even when you create a good environment that, you try and create this safe space, there's still going to be people on your team, that aren't going to come and speak to you about it as well. So I'd say very few actually come and open up about it properly. Even in my current team, I think there's probably one person that would come to me and tell me everything. The rest would probably have some reservations.
It's important to have someone to talk to, though, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
What do you do to combat that then?
My sales coach.
Oh no!
Nice plug.
You plugged it.
But no, I think I always encourage everyone to have external support. If I am really stressed out about some changes in my internal company, I don't want to be seen as, and I think you learn this really quickly in leadership, like your internal reputation is super important and you've got to protect that as well. So I don't typically, I'll be honest with people internally, but I always need someone externally to kind of really get things out of my head and understand how I best then approach it.
And then you went from this giant HSBC to what looks like a proper startup.
Yeah.
What made you go from that to that?
I think it was the age of not really knowing what I wanted to do. So I actually didn't want to take that role. The recruiter spoke to me. The CEO was a year or two younger than me. And at the time I was like 20, early 20s. I was like, I'm not working for a 23-year-old. Like, this doesn't make any sense. I had my interview at TGI Fridays, which also kind of fed into that. What on earth is going on here? I then found out once I accepted it, I met the guy and he just, like, I'm massively grateful for him. That was our baby. We were growing it to sell. We did do a really successful job in 7 years against the odds. I think when I started, there was 4 of us in the back of a limo shop, in like this little office with bars on the windows, and the limo office boss was a questionable character, to say the least. So we had the most fun that I've ever had working anywhere at that place. We learned so much in a really quick time. Then COVID happened, so unfortunately that kind of put a stop to that sale and the business at the time. And then I ended up moving on from there. But it was an incredible learning experience for me.
And it feels like that's where you found your calling, in terms of you want to be on the start of a journey and build that company up. And you are now, Datamaran, a true scale up.
Yeah.
Like lots of people say, we want to scale the business.
Yeah.
You are actually doing it at an incredible rate. I want to talk about that.
Yeah.
But before then, the next place is where we first met, which is when you were at Cloud Call.
Yeah.
About 200 employees. You had several roles there. What I really want to know is, the leadership role just come to an early age and stuck with you. As a sales leader at Cloud Call, very different type of business to HSBC and the startup before then, that would have had lots of processes and rules the startup wouldn't have. This is now your chance at, a sort of established company. But what did you do at Cloud Call to help that business put the processes in place as a sales leader at such a young age?
Cloud Call, interestingly, I joined Cloud Call as a partnerships manager. So that kind of sat in the marketing space. And the sales director there, a guy called Neville, you've probably met him before. Me and Neville were just cut from similar cloths. So we got on really well, and he was very much like, look, you need to come over to where you belong. You don't belong in marketing. You need to get back into sales. And this was when I expected to kind of work at the previous startup company for the rest of my career. Like, I hadn't even thought about working anywhere else. So when I went to Cloud Call, it was very much like I didn't really know what I wanted to do. Do I want to go back into sales? If I do, I'm probably looking at an IC role, because you don't get the same gravitas doing startup management as you do like a bigger company or a scale up. They want specific experience typically. So I kind of found this partnership role, which seemed a bit in between. Started there, and then the CRO and sales director were very much like, what are you doing? That we've hired you in the wrong space. Let's get you over to build out the SDR function. So we had one BDR at the time, who'd been there a couple of years, hadn't really had much management or processes, had done well. But there'd been no competition, no processes, no management for him. So we went through the process of like applying for that role, and then they had the same BDR manager over in the US team, so in Boston. I immediately was kind of like, okay, we need to figure out how we're doing this. What everything you can imagine from BDR world, like it was starting from scratch. Even though we were a more established company, it was like, okay, let's first focus on like the marketing inbound leads, how we're working them, what all that looks like, aligning with that team on content requirements, etc. Then it was focused on outbound and how we do that effectively. So I mapped out all these kind of processes. The team started doing really well. Recruited everyone. I actually recruited a guy from the previous company who ended up being my top performer as well. And then after a little while, we'd done really well. We'd overachieved on revenue, overachieved on meetings. The BDR manager in the US was let go. So that was a bit more Wild West in terms of their process adoption. So I then moved to look after both teams. That was fun.
So I noticed you stepped into a global BDR manager role at Cloud Call. What was that like then, when you started to manage different time zones? even though America speak English, it's a different culture.
Massively.
Right? How did you get used to the different time zones, different culture, the different nuances of the market?
Personality-wise, I probably fit more with Americans. I got on really quickly, really well with that team. And they still now, you might see it on LinkedIn sometimes, they'll comment LCG. So that was one of the companies that I got told I can't swear at my team. So I put LFG. I didn't know what it meant. It was a very American thing. They taught me what it meant. So I kept putting LFG, then got told I can't. So we changed it to LCG and it stood for like let censored go instead. And they still comment that all the time. They still reach out to me all the time. So yeah, I think like when you're naturally extroverted, and it's almost like a dirty word in sales now, you see it on LinkedIn all the time, like you can't be extroverted. I think there's use for both in any sales team, and I think the more different personality types and different backgrounds and different experiences you have, the better your team's going to perform. And that's something I've seen like throughout my career. So yeah, the time zones I'm still not used to because they change it all the time. And it's like, you'll just get used to it and you'll be like, oh, okay, it's 12 o'clock over there. Or it's 8 in the morning over there. I can't message them there. And then it's like, no, it's not. It's 9. What is it, 10 now? I Google it. Time zones.
What was the biggest difference you noticed in prospecting in America versus the UK?
It's harder to get through to people in America. But when you do, they're much more open to have a conversation typically.
Why do you think that is?
I don't know. I really don't know. I think it's just a cultural thing. I think sales in general is probably a much more respectful. So sales, if you tell people at a family party you're in sales over here, you're kind of looked at as that sleazy one in the room. I think America it's got a little bit more gravitas around it being a really professional career. So I think that's evident sometimes maybe. Wild guess, I don't know. But
No, I totally agree.
Yeah.
I spent probably the first 10 years of my career not telling people I was in sales at family parties and gatherings. Business development executive.
My mum to this day still thinks I fix computers. I've never fixed a computer. I'm the worst person technically. But she's like, oh yeah, Carly works with computers.
Do you think that's an unconscious thing, or do you think that is kind of her way of not going down that?
My mum's not the brightest in the world, to be honest. I think it's more, you can tell her the same thing 20 times and she'll still create her own world for it.
So you won't be promoting this podcast by going, look, Mum, I made it. I'm on the podcast. You won't be sharing this one with her.
No.
Okay. Within Datamaran, as I say, that is a true scale up.
Yeah.
People talk about wanting to scale all the time. Mm-hmm. You are living it.
Living the dream.
Tell us, what is that like being at a true scale up? What have you seen on the front line as a manager at a true scale up?
I think the biggest thing is the speed of change. And I think, honestly, it's a certain type of character that you need to be able to adapt and survive in that kind of environment. So the kind of term we use all the time is we're building the plane as we're flying it. Our product's great, but yeah, process-wise, we're probably still, a lot of the time, closer to a startup than a scale-up. So that's what we're doing now. That's why this role that I'm in now has been created, is to really start creating those better and more aligned processes. But I think the speed things change. I call it like the common sense approach. Like, you won't have things spelled out to you or handed to you on a plate in that kind of environment. You've got to have that degree of ability to think for yourself, think on your feet, and commit to a decision. And it's fine if that decision's wrong. It's fine if you make a mistake, but it's better that you go for it and then learn the hard way than sit there and try and figure it out for 2 weeks. Like, we don't have time to do that. So it's that mindset of like, we need to get things done and make sure that we're making an informed decision as we can. But yeah, it's nowhere near like the informed decisions that you'd have at, a much bigger, further along company. So
you say you need a certain type of personality to work at a true scale up.
Yeah.
Tell me more about that.
I think as cliche as it is, positive is the first and foremost. You don't have the time to be dealing with emotional drains. So we done a thing, I can't remember what company it was, but one of the companies I was at before, like, put it into the context, are you a drain or a radiator? So you can't be a drain in this kind of environment. You've got to be someone that can adapt quickly. Yes, there'll be things that come up that you're like, oh, but you just have to get on with it. Like, you have to kind of keep moving forward. And then I think the the second part is empathy, like really high on every department is running at 100 miles an hour all the time. That means the one thing that sometimes could be improved, and this is unanimous across all scale-ups, is the internal communication. So I think having empathy for sometimes if someone hasn't responded, or if they've got a movie meeting, or whatever it is that you'd expect as standard in bigger orgs, they're not going to be the same at a scale-up. So I think having that understanding of kind of internal plays and what's going on is really important.
How do you keep that empathy when you are in a scale up? You've got constant targets to hit, constant pressure. You are at a bottleneck junction. You're waiting on someone else. They're not getting back to you.
Yeah.
How do you keep that empathy?
I think everyone does get back to you quick enough here. And if they don't, you can call them. Like it's not pressure. No one's precious with stuff like that. I think normally it's more clashes around what we think the direction should be that happen. But it's just normal. So there's a guy that I clash with fairly regularly. We're also like best friends internally. So it's very much that healthy, no, I think this and I think this. And ultimately it comes down to like we're looking at it from two different lenses. So I think it's about, okay, to stop this happening going forward, what can we do to make it easier? Like we can have preemptive meetings once a week to sync up on what we're both working on so that this doesn't happen again. But I think it's also healthy. I think it's really healthy to have a team where you feel comfortable enough to clash with, and sort of stand by your different opinions and stand by why you're thinking that. And normally neither of you are wrong. It's just a different lens of things. So, I think communication ultimately is the biggest part of keeping empathetic.
I think you do. You need that healthy tension.
Yeah.
You need to challenge and push each other.
Absolutely.
Give me some examples that demonstrate the speed at which your scale up is moving at.
Ultimately, we don't have competition in terms of tech. We're starting to, but we don't. We've been the ones doing this for the last 10 years. Our competition is like consultants, which is a more traditional approach. So we spoke about hiring ex-consultants for our CS team at QBR. A day later, there was a job board approved. The post was up. We were recruiting for it. So literally the day after the QBR ended, that was done. And I think those kind of things, the same thing happens with, messaging. Like 6 months ago, we were talking about a certain way to talk about our product. A week later, it was a different way, which kind of confused some people on the team. But ultimately, it still leads back to the original way. It's just a slightly different positioning of it. So, yeah, things change weekly.
And how do you ensure your team are constantly on the right message and they're not getting frustrated with constant change? Because that can be a problem.
Yeah, massive.
Like the speed of things moving, people just getting comfortable.
Yeah.
How do you help your team with that?
I don't think we've got all the answers yet, to be honest. I think we're still figuring that out. I think there's me that's coming on the UK side, and there's Kat that's moved into a kind of similar role on the US team. So I think that's why this role's been created is to try and make sure messaging's aligned, make sure the communication is right to the team as well. And I think Jazz, who's my VP, is very similar to me. Like he communicates a lot of things, and then maybe we need to work out what we need to figure out before we communicate it and how also to manage the changes. So I think often there's a lot of time put into thinking about the changes and thinking about what's needed. There's not always the same time put into how we communicate those changes. So that's what we're still trying to improve. But yeah, I think that's why me and Kat are in the roles we're in.
Speaking about being in the roles and just picking up on what you're saying today, and having known you for a number of years now, I know that one thing you're very good at is recruitment.
Yeah.
Talk to me about that. That is often the thing that sales leaders hate the most and get wrong the most.
Yeah.
What is your recruitment process, start to finish, and why is it so good?
I think it's really easy to get recruitment wrong. It's way easier to get it wrong than it is to get it right. So I think for me, there's 3 key kind of areas I recruit around, which is IQ. You got to have a pretty decent IQ. It's the one thing we all don't really have much control of. Your IQ is what it is. I think more importantly to that, your EQ. Bringing all the cues to you today. So your kind of emotional intelligence, I've got specific questions that test around that. And then your AQ, which I think is massively undervalued in sales, but it's like your bounce back ability. How much can you take a knock and still keep moving? So yeah, they're the three things. And then I think it also just comes down to a kind of, I don't want to call it a gut feel, but like, I can't really see them fitting with the team. I can't see them fitting into what we're selling. There's some people that are incredible at that would be good at a certain type of sales, but they couldn't do, I don't know, enterprise sales, for example. So they'd be great as, mid-market AE, but they're not really that way inclined. And there's a very different skill set in different sales roles. So, I think it's just about really going deep on the interview as well.
Give us some of your best questions that you ask for all the cues.
I've got them all written down, Mark. I don't know them off the top of my head. There's a really good video on YouTube though, by a guy that I can't remember the name of. What's his name? He works at a company called Ben, I think, about benefits. He's like the VP of sales over there. He's got a 10-minute talk on YouTube about questions he asked specifically about IQ and EQ and how to recruit A players.
You mentioned enterprise sales there,
mm-hmm.
right? You mentioned about there being a different type of professional for maybe mid-market enterprise.
Yeah. Unless
I'm mistaken, and this is the first time enterprise has appeared on your LinkedIn CV, so to speak. What is the difference now in your world managing enterprise sales versus any other sales that you've done?
I think enterprise, typically speaking, you have to go a lot deeper and wider in the account. You've got to go a lot more on research. You've got to have a strong point of view. You've also got to be able to speak very effectively to business problems and senior stakeholders. And I do think in a lot of other sales roles, there's like the art of sales and the art of sales and the science of sales. I think you can perform quite highly with just the art in a lot of different industries. In enterprise, you need the science as well. You can't have all the the EQ and negotiation skills without having a decent sales process. So I think that's probably what's striking me so far as most apparent is you need a really solid sales structure and process, and you need to be able to multi-thread and build a few different champions.
I'm guessing you've got a methodology then at Datamaran?
Yeah.
What one?
MedPick.
Why MedPick then?
I think it fits in with how we sell. I think it's like the standard for most enterprise orgs, and I've spoke to a lot of people and got some mentors externally who are seasoned at enterprise sales as well as my VP. And yeah, I think that the one you can then layer on other things on top of it. So I think longer term we'll probably be looking at sort of sprinkling Challenger into that as well. But we're very much kind of starting the whole process mapping, and that makes the most sense for what we do.
Kylie, let's talk about coaching.
Mm-hmm.
What does coaching mean to you in terms of coaching the salespeople that you manage?
The first thing I've brought in is kind of deal reviews, where they're quite structured following like MedPick. We've then got a scorecard at the bottom with a load of questions that relate back to the different points. And ultimately that then tells us, one, as we're talking through it, we'll use that as a coaching opportunity anyway in real time. But two, we'll also then know what we're forecasting with some decent, hopefully, accuracy. So yeah, I think it's very much about the structure. If they understand the structure and they understand what information they need to find out, then the coaching comes down to the how you're doing that and how can we improve that. So yeah, that's what it looks like at the minute.
And how often do you believe a sales rep should get one-to-one coaching?
As often as you can afford to do it. But I do think it varies massively. So I've got a guy, Steve, on my team, seasoned enterprise seller, been in this space for like 10 years. He's not going to need the same level of coaching as someone that's been in the role 2 months that's just been promoted from an SDR. They're going to totally different. And I think especially with people that are more seasoned, you can annoy them with giving them too much coaching. And if they feel like it's too basic or it's, like they're already doing it, why are we going over this? So I think it's got to be adapted to who you're working with and what they need. And I also think coaching isn't a one-on-one session every time. Coaching can also be, a really quick question, that you've shot over to them in a call that they're talking about. That's a coaching opportunity. Them speaking about something in a sales meeting and other people on the team asking those questions, that's a coaching opportunity as well. So I think there's often a perception that coaching is like me and my manager sat in a room and, they're telling me everything I should have asked on that call and I didn't ask. But I don't think I think coaching is more of a mindset.
I love that. I love the phrase like random moments of coaching.
Yeah.
Like they just happen and you think, right, this is a coaching moment. I'm going to take 10 minutes here.
Yeah.
Let's coach. Well, actually, just in the office, I don't know if you were I was just having a random moment of coaching where I was coaching someone on the 3 reasons people don't buy.
Yeah.
That wasn't a session in the calendar.
Exactly.
Just I knew this was 10 minutes I needed to have with an AE on the 3 reasons people don't buy. You've obviously decided to give your team access to My Sales Coach, external coaching. What's the reasons you decided, do you know what? I'm not going to be the only coach here. Mm-hmm. And I know you still coach all the time, but you want to give the team external coaching. What's the reasons that you chose to do that?
My career really took off in terms of like the compensation I get, the LinkedIn growth and all of that kind of stuff, the opportunities to come on things like this. It only really took off the last couple of years. And the reason for that was I started networking externally. And I really got to understand like the phrase, your network is your net worth. Like, it's so true. And when I got made redundant from Cloud Call and my whole team got wiped out and I just threw myself into like helping the team find new roles and I didn't even think about my own next role at that point. And what the value of me having external coaching done was I put one post up and it blew up and I had multiple. I literally cried. Most people that have ever worked with me will say like they've never seen me cry. I'm not an emotional driven person like that. I was so overwhelmed with how much support and conversations were set up and people that had met me at an event or met me here or met me there. So I think as well as the coaching to do your job, I think it's really important to understand how you can develop a network externally, and when you can use that network as well. And you never know what's around the corner ever in business, right? So even though you think things are going swimmingly, you could suddenly be made redundant. Your company could shut down. You could have a massive family experience where you can't do the job you were doing before. Like, all these things can happen really quickly. So I think it's really important to build external support as much as possible. And I think My Sales Coach, as well as doing the tactical, they're going to help you with this deal, it's also your chance to get to know people outside of your kind of bubble in your company. And I don't think enough salespeople do that effectively.
I mean, like you say, you are just one email to the wrong bloke called Chris away
literally
from shutting a business down.
Exactly.
What impact have you seen by giving the team additional coaching to accelerate the event? What impact have you seen?
So I think the biggest one has been Alicia. I'm sure she won't mind me saying it. Alicia is early 20s. She's been a BDR for a little while, performed well there, got the promotion to AE. And I think at the time she got promoted, there was a lack of internal support. She's been using Nigel a lot. I listened to one of her first calls, one of her, so now I manage Alicia again, one of her most recent ones, and the difference is huge. Like, for someone to have, and I think I overheard you saying it earlier, like, you're not going to learn this in this takes 10 years to learn this level of commercial awareness. You're not going to know that at 20, sorry, Alicia, I think she's 24, 25. You're not going to know that, but the growth that she's had from that early discovery call I listened to the one I listened to more recently is amazing. Like, genuinely, really, I was like, oh my God, like the way you have controlled the conversation better and you're asking better questions and you're getting more information and you're also sounding a lot more confident and not as junior. And I think that's like entirely down to Nigel.
And just for clarity, Nigel's obviously one of the coaches at My Sales Coach.
Yeah.
There will be some managers listening to this podcast that sort of coach their team, but really it's KPIs, metrics, it's ad hoc at best. What would you say to someone that is a manager of a team that doesn't have formal coaching process in place? They don't have external coaching. It's just not really present in their sales team. What would you say to them?
So, like, I don't always coach, right? If bigger things come up from my manager, I've got to do what ultimately what the leadership are telling me. So I think understanding you can't always coach as much as you'd want to. The BDR team that I left to come to this role was probably a prime example of that. I didn't give them anywhere near the coaching I'd have wanted to have give that team. And that was something I felt really bittersweet about when I got the promotion, because I was like, I'm not really leaving them how I want to leave them. I think as well, like the investment in something like my sales coach isn't big in comparison to what you gain from it. So if you just, especially when you're selling kind of bigger deals, like if you gain one extra sale from it, that's covered the cost entirely. So I think if you're not doing it, you're doing a disservice to your team ultimately. And I think you should, if you're in any kind of leadership role, you should be thinking about your team first. And I think if you're not advocating for them to get better and you're not providing that for them, then I think you probably need to give a think about what you're doing in leadership.
And you talk about putting a team first, and I know that you do that a lot, but let's talk about you for a second.
Yeah.
You were telling me just before we started rolling about the impact coaching's had on you, and I was like, whoa, save it for the podcast. Talk us about the coaching that you've had and the impact it's had on you as a sales leader.
I've had life coaches, I've had therapy, I've had like these random motivational speaker ceremony things. I've got coaches all the time in my life, and I think it's really important to have that. So yeah, I think like Jacqueline is someone that was a coach to me for a while, especially in like the BDR management side. My old CRO was a coach to me for a while. And I think it's really important to have coaches. I've just signed up a new mentor, a guy called John Kaplan. He's like, I understand that my knowledge on MedPick isn't where I'd want it to be for managing an enterprise team. So immediately I was like, right, who can I find that's really knowledgeable in this space that I can shortly bridge that gap? And yeah, he came highly recommended, and we've had our initial chat, and super excited about that. So I think it's in every area of your life. I think the only coach I haven't had is probably a personal trainer. Like every area of your life is just important. If you want to get better at that or you want to make improvements, like why struggle and do it yourself when it's almost like the easy way, right? It's the easy way to figure out from speaking to someone else who's been there, done that, got the t-shirt.
And let's leave it on that. Yeah. I think that's a great note to go out on. Carly, honestly, absolute pleasure to have you up in the office. Thanks for coming up all the way from London. Woo. On the train to get you on the orange sofas. But it's been great. I've really enjoyed this podcast. I think people are going to learn a lot from what you've shared here. As I say, leadership at such a young age, and you've done that across different industries, different company sizes, and now a true scale up. How can people find more about you?
Usually on a Wednesday, we're at the Woolpack in Bermondsey after work, so feel free to pop down there. But generally, add me on LinkedIn. Come and speak to me if you see me at events. I promise I don't bite. And yeah, set up some time to have a chat.
Great. Thank you, Carly. Awesome guest. Awesome episode. Thank you.
Thank you.